Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords, and there's Big Chungus reclining in her natural habitat. Oh, she's heard her sister eating some of the food. Now she's thinking, do I want that food? Of course I want that food. I want all the food. But we'll see if she starts to move in a moment here. In any case, a couple of programming notes for you before I get to the main topic, which is a review of RPG Pundit Presents number 5, The Child Eaters. First of all, this Sunday we have an episode of Inappropriate Characters, and if you're interested in watching it, keep an eye open. Subscribe. Go to Inappropriate Characters now and subscribe. But if not, I'll try to put a notice here. It's Sunday at 7:30 Central, as usual. However, at this episode, we're not going to have Venger because he's got he's got family commitments. He couldn't make it to this one. So we're still at this moment looking to see who's going to take his place. If you're interested in being a one-time guest host, let us know. Give us your reasons. Of course, only one person will be selected, and odds are there'll be somebody who is at least somewhat known in the OSR hobby, probably somebody who's done a game. Not always necessarily the case, we'll see. We might just let one of our fans try it out. And it won't be the last time we do this, I'm sure. Anyways, in other news, I wanted to comment that my Gonzo Weird Fantasy campaign book, World of the Last Sun, is actually getting really, really close to coming into print. So keep an eye open for that. It's going to be about like 278 pages long, full of stuff that you can use in your campaign. You can play a campaign in that setting as a whole, or you can cannibalize it for parts, just as typical with OSR products. Going to have a lot of random generation tables and random event tables. It's all stuff that's been compiled from certain episodes, certain issues of RPG Pundit Presents from the Gonzo series. Tonight, though, we're talking about one of the medieval authentic games, and or adventures, rather. And this one is called The Child Eaters. And The Child Eaters is an adventure. It's RPG Pundit Presents 5, available in English and in Spanish, actually, from Spectre Press. It's very short. It's only about 9 pages long. It only costs $1.99, and it's one of the early adventures that I wrote for the RPG Pundit Presents series. Now, before I started doing RPG Pundit Presents, I didn't consider myself a great adventure writer. I'm still not a great adventure writer, but now I've become a pretty good one after writing a ton of adventures for both medieval authentic and Gonzo adventuring in the setting, in the books that I've for Lion and Dragon and for DCC. So. Yeah, this was one of my early attempts, and I think if I wanted to be critical, what I would say is that I probably could have fleshed it out more. You'll see that most of my later RPG Pundit Presents adventures have a bigger page count than this, and that's because I would elaborate on the details a bit more, provide more information for the DM, more stats and things like that. In this case, I kept it a little more bare bones, but then again, there's some DMs that might like that, right? Like it gives you the information that's necessary, the basic plot, anything special that you can't just reproduce with an AD&D first edition book. All of that. And obviously it's relatively system neutral, so to speak. I mean, technically I did it for Lion and Dragon, so if you're running Lion and Dragon, that's the easiest. But Lion and Dragon's an OSR game. It's compatible with any other OSR game. You're not going to have a big problem there. Now, what's the story of the Child Eaters about? Well, first of all, Chungus action. Heavy Chungus action. First of all, it takes place in an isolated region, right? Like, it takes place in England in the game, in the 15th century. And so in this case, it's in the north. But if you're transplanting the adventure into any setting of yours, the important thing is that it has to be in the border areas, right? In the border countries, just where all the crazy things happened, because it was more lawless. There was areas of wilderness, there was areas of banditry and anarchy, and there were areas where just you had these little villages that were super isolated, and and had their own customs and their own ways and their own ancient rules and conflicts, and the local lord was a power unto himself and stuff like that, right? So it happens in a town called Wharton, I think Wharton. And then there's another little, it's a village really, and there's another little village nearby. So it's a story about two villages. And the player characters can end up being drawn into this either by accident, if you have them passing through, or they can end up being called up for assistance by the local knight, who's in, the lord of the manor in the area, who's having a bit of a problem. And there's actually two problems that the player characters would know about right up front. One is that these two villages are feuding with each other, and that there's been incidents of banditry. And the reason is that one of these villages is being quite prosperous in the past year or so. It's having really good a bumper harvest. It's financially viable and stable and growing. It's got a good relationship with the local lord. And then the other village is not doing very well. It's had a terrible crop. It's had a series of mishaps. And on top of it all, and this is where the second subject comes in, a number of its children have mysteriously gone missing. And so these villages are somewhat at odds with each other, especially the people from the second village, who are very angry with Wharton, envious of their success. And so some of the people from this other village have taken to committing acts of banditry, right? So it could start out as simple as the local knight asks the player characters to come in and help finish this problem of banditry, or if they're of a more diplomatic sort, to come and try to make some amends between the people in the village. But the second issue is that there are these missing children that have mysteriously disappeared. And there are some people in the second village who blame the people in the first village and suspect that there's evil afoot. And the player characters will obviously be having to kind of investigate this. So there is an element to it that is an investigative adventure. Now, this is an adventure that's set up for low-level play, like basically an introductory adventure. It would be pretty good for that. The menace is relatively low-level. Big Chungus is hearing her sister tossing things to the ground from a table nearby. Anyway, it's a relatively low-level introductory type of adventure. You could theoretically get through it all with minimum combat, but you could also find your player characters in a situation where you get something akin to like The Wicker Man, right? So if you've watched that movie, they can end up facing a danger that'll be really overwhelming if they're not very careful. And there's even a chance that, they end up facing a much more terrible supernatural danger if they don't actually, if they dawdle along and ignore the things that are happening. So, that means that at the same time, it's relatively easy to scale this up to a higher level adventure if you just kind of up the menace of some of the characters and you speed up the timetable a little bit. Right, so then you could make it into an adventure for, middle and upper level characters. I don't want to say much more about it because obviously that would be spoilers. I don't want anyone to have, their adventure that they want to run get ruined because the players watch the video. So this is all I'm going to talk about it. But the Child Eaters is I think a pretty good adventure. I mean, I think it's also one of my most initial attempts, but it's also one of my least expensive RPG Pundit Presents books. It costs $1.99. So you can't really go wrong for $1.99. And I can say this, that the adventure, when I ran it with my original Dark Albion campaign group, it was very well received. So much so that one of my players later ran it for some of his friends too, right? So once the book was in print. So I think that it's a question of, it depends on how you run. If you want stuff that is more detailed and kind of more handholds you, check out some of the later adventures of RPG Pundit Presents. As I go along, I give a bit more in-depth detail to everything, stat out everything more carefully. This one's still me being a bit amateur, I'll admit that, right? But if you like the premise, you're going to enjoy it, especially if you're not a DM who's afraid to, play around with the material. I guess that's everything for today. Check us out on Sunday at Inappropriate Characters. And feel free to share this video anywhere you like. If this is the first time you're watching me, well, subscribe. My videos, some of my videos like this one are reviews, but a lot of them are, commentary on the gaming hobby and its politics. Yeah, join up, subscribe. We're really doing fantastically well with subscribers now. I'm not sure if we're at 3,000 already or getting close. It's really cool. And if you want to support me, well, I do have a PayPal and a Patreon account, but what most people do, and what part of what this video is all about, is to check out my products, my games like Lion and Dragon, Dark Albion, Arrows of Indra, the Medieval Authentic Companion. What's that sister of yours doing? Huh? What's she doing, Chungus? and of course the RPG Pundit Presents series. So if you want to support me, check out my books, because then you're going to get something that you can use too, right? And my bigger books aren't that expensive; they're very affordable, actually. Look at all that Chungus action. But my Pundit Presents PDF series is really cheap, right? You could get you could get the adventure I'm talking about today for $1.99, right? They range from 99 cents all the way up to maybe $4.99, except for Star Adventurer, which is my awesome space opera RPG that's $9.99, which is technically RPG Pundit Presents 100. But that way you get something for yourself, but you're also supporting me for the price of a coffee, or a coffee and a sandwich, or something like that. So be sure to check all that out, and we'll see you guys very soon. Currently smoking Dunhill Amber Root Bulldog plus Argento Natural.